Welcome back to Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. For some time now, there's been a fear that marriage equality would be the next domino to fall in the push by conservatives to reshape this nation into one that is a white, heterosexual, Christian nation. We may be starting to see the first bit of wobble towards that fall. A Texas judge has filed a lawsuit claiming that marriage equality is unconstitutional. In her suit against the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, Judge Diane Hensley claimed that Ogrefel v. Hodges, which was the Supreme Court case that guaranteed marriage equality, she said that, quote, the federal judiciary has no authority to recognize or invent fundamental constitutional rights. I suppose in essence arguing that the Constitution didn't expressly say same-sex marriage was a thing. It isn't, and therefore the judiciary has made it up. And as a result, she shouldn't have to recognize it, and neither should anyone else. When same-sex marriage became legal back in 2015, she straight up just stopped officiating all weddings altogether, citing that if she was forced to perform same-sex marriages, it would be against her conservative Christian faith. And even after she got back to officiating weddings, she still refused to do any same-sex marriage at all. And if a same-sex couple did come to her to get married, she would tell them to go somewhere else, because she wouldn't do it. This led her to get investigated by the State Commission on Judicial Conduct in 2018 because, same-sex marriage was the law. She can't just not follow the law just because she doesn't want to. But all that really resulted in was a reprimand and a warning that she's not impartial when it comes to sexual orientation matters. As a result, she then filed a lawsuit against them, saying that they were violating her rights under Texas's religious freedom law. Her suit was then dismissed, and then that decision was upheld by the Texas Court of Appeals. So while she couldn't win her suit, basically saying that making her officiate same-sex marriages was against her religious freedom rights, the Texas Supreme Court kind of had her back because they rewrote the code of conduct that the State Commission had found her in violation of to say that actually a judge publicly refraining from performing a wedding ceremony based on their sincerely held religious beliefs is not a violation. So if a judge doesn't want to perform same-sex marriages, they don't have to. But of course, in her mind, that's not enough. No judge should have to officiate a same-sex wedding. In fact, they shouldn't be legal at all, and marriage equality should be overturned in its entirety. Attempting to overturn Obergefell is nothing new. Former Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis also tried to sue to get the Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell as a part of her appeal of a verdict against her where she was sued by same-sex couples for refusing to issue them a marriage license. In her case, she filed a 90-page petition to the Supreme Court, saying she shouldn't have to pay $100,000 in damages to the couple that sued her. She shouldn't have to pay the $260,000 in their legal fees. And all while they're at it, just overturned the entire marriage equality case in its entirety. Unfortunately for her, the court refused to hear her appeal. So it would seem Judge Hensley is trying to pick up that ball where Kim Davis put it down and get it across the end zone. For many on the right, allowing same-sex marriage is an affront to their religious liberty and goes against their belief that marriage is a sacred institution between one man and one woman. But for the last decade, same-sex marriage has been legal, whether they like it or not, and they really do not like it. But even though it's felt like settled law in that decade, as we discovered when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, even the things that feel settled and done and established sometimes are not. And with a conservative majority in the Supreme Court who does the bidding of the religious right whenever possible, seemingly, now more than ever, marriage equality is possibly at risk federally. Let's not forget, during their confirmation hearings, both Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett said Roe v. Wade was established, settled law. Yet once they became Supreme Court justices, that did not stop them from overturning it when they had the chance. And this desire to overturn same-sex marriage, overturn any law that goes against their quote-unquote Christian values really goes to the heart of the question of who we are as a nation. Some would argue that we've always been a Christian nation. This country should only be about what aligns with those values and those beliefs, while many, myself included, would say that it could not be farther from the truth. This country was never founded on the basis of Christian beliefs and moralities. And one of our country's greatest strengths was its ability to respect and integrate many different beliefs and faiths into one nation. That multiculturalism is part of what makes America great. And limiting that and saying, well, my singular belief says this isn't something I approve of, so nobody should get to have it, only does the opposite. We don't have a state religion, but if they had their way, we would all be under Christian rule. When you really get down to it, marriage equality is about equality, about respect, about mutual respect of a way of life that while it may not be your own, you still allow others to live their life their way. And really, well, this doesn't align with my Christian beliefs, really doesn't cut it. It is not a reason to say nobody should get to do this because I don't agree with it. These are just people that want to live their lives their way. They shouldn't be forced to conform to a singular way of being or thinking. When you put that on a national scale, you get places like Iran, where conforming to a single religious way of existing is the only way you're allowed to be. That should never be what we want our country to be like. These are people who love to say that we're the land of the free and we can be how we want to be and the government can't tell us how to be. They want to live in how other people can be, and they want the government to tell them how they can be because they need to not be the way they don't like. They basically say, I want freedom, but only for the things that I like. I shouldn't have to endure the things that other people like or believe. As a nation, we shouldn't be looking into how we can limit other people's lives, take away rights, and make everything as homogenous as possible. We should be giving people more rights and becoming more diverse, allowing more different kinds of people to coexist together and make this country more interesting and better for it. I really feel like once same-sex marriage was established, that's where it should have stopped. While there's a group of people who definitely don't like that it was made legal and would prefer it to have never been established in the first place, once it was, it really shouldn't be able to be unmade. Why are conservatives so fixated on taking away any rights that doesn't agree with them and only having the establishment of rights that they want and directly benefit them? They seem to feel like their right to take away other people's rights should never be infringed upon. I suppose one silver lining, if you can even call it that, if the worst did come to pass and the overturning of Oberfeld v. Hodges by the Supreme Court did happen, is that thanks to Joe Biden, the Respect of Marriage Act that he signed into law back in 2022 means that all federal governments must recognize same-sex marriages and that all the states recognize those performed in other states. So at the very least, the overturning wouldn't dissolve already established marriages. It would just mean that the states wouldn't have to allow new same-sex marriages. It's not much, especially if you were in a same-sex relationship and wanted to make it official, but at the very least, it's something, and in cases like this, something is better than literally nothing. But hopefully never come to that. While it is true that there's a conservative majority Supreme Court that has already ruled in ways to strip away rights that we assumed were already established and not going anywhere, just because they have the potential and ability to overturn same-sex marriage doesn't mean that they will. Though admittedly saying just because they can doesn't mean they will isn't exactly comforting. But at this point it seems like that's the best we can do. Just hope that they don't feel a need to. And Judge Hensley doesn't present them with a compelling enough argument to convince them to do so. So are we poised to see the end of same-sex marriage in this country? It's hard to say, for sure. First thing, I want to stay optimistic. I think that, yes, there is definitely a possibility, and yes, this case potentially being brought before the Supreme Court could certainly be the thing that does it. I'm not quite sure that I feel that it will, or that the Supreme Court will even agree to hear this in the first place. But the fact we even have to entertain the concern in the first place is already incredibly disheartening. This shouldn't be something that should still be up for debate. It was made law, and it should remain so. We should strive to be a nation that gives rights, not takes them away, that makes things easier for people to live their lives their way, not harder. We have a long way to go as a nation, and we can be so much better than we already are. We already are pretty great in a lot of ways, but we could be so much better. But things like this are steps in the wrong direction. Well, maybe not everyone would see it that way. Getting rid of marriage equality would make things worse in this country. And I hope we never again have to live in a world without it. And what's worse is I know that if the Supreme Court did decide to strike it down, it would simply be setting a very concerning precedent, and we'd have to wonder what is the next right that we believe to be set in stone, basically, that no longer will be. What's next? Interracial marriage is next on the chopping block? I hope not, but at this rate, it may be. A nation with less rights isn't the kind of nation we should strive to be. That really just is the bottom line. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off, another slice of news.